Hello, my name is Greta Harrison. Welcome to Born Fabulous, where we speak with parents and accomplished individuals who just happen to have disabilities. You're about to hear episode 13, which is the last part of a 5-part interview with Jeannie Harris. This is also the last episode of season 1. Jeannie is the mother of Tim Harris. Tim is famous for owning Tim's Place, a restaurant that listed free hugs on the menu. Tim currently has a very successful public speaking career. He is 33 years old and has already had a very exciting life, full of travel and meeting wonderful people, like President and Mrs. Obama at separate events. Tim happens to have Down syndrome. Jeannie is a retired former business owner. She and her husband of 38 years, Keith, have 4 sons. They love to travel, often as sailors. Jeannie calls herself a student of life. We met at one of Tim's speeches 6 years ago. Now please enjoy this clip of Love is a Potion. The lyrics were written by Melissa Riggio, who was the focus of episodes 1 through 4. The music and voice are by Rachel Fuller. So now let's talk about the weight challenge, because when I saw him speak, he had lost a significant amount of weight. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't easy. And he was very proud of it.
He should be proud because, a lot of people may or may not know this, but people with Down syndrome actually have a lower metabolism than the normal population. And so for Tim and our kids to lose that weight and to maintain that weight, they have to have a focus and they have to have really strong intentions. And he actually is, he knows himself well enough to know that he's not going to do it on his own. So he has to get himself workout buddies and works with trainers who will really push him because he won't quite push himself. He actually almost has to get people who are, you picture the commercial of the woman leading the spin class, who you go in a spin class and it's all casual and then the doors slam closed and the lights good and they're all focused on her and she's like, all right, we're going to ride now, and like, that's the kind of what Tim almost needs to keep himself motivated. And eating is so hard. You should have seen when he had the restaurant, we had a menu. Like we said, this is what Tim can eat. He can't eat off the menu. And then we had to tell him, don't tell customers that you don't eat off the menu, because he would say, oh yeah, I can't eat that. That's not healthy. He would tell them. And we're like, no, Tim, it's just that it's not healthy for you, because if you eat that every day, you're going to gain your weight back,
And he lost like 70 pounds, right?
He lost 70 pounds. He's put about 30 back on. And man, it's scary because he puts it on fast. Like when we left we went to travel and we left like around Halloween and we came back and he put on 15 to 20 pounds. And he puts it on that fast, but it doesn't come off that fast. So he's struggling and it bothers him to always have to be worried about what he can eat and can't eat. And it breaks my heart because he's constantly thinking about it, but he's also constantly feeling bad because he'll do stuff and go out, get a buddy to go out and who will eat a hamburger and French fries with him. And he's going, well, I was celebrating with my buddy, so I had to do this, but then he feels bad. And I hate seeing that, but yet I want him to put some pressure on himself to keep the weight down for his health and well-being.
Well, it's a struggle that many people share. I don't think everybody with Down syndrome has the lower metabolism, but I think it's probably more common. It is maybe more common, but
people like to feed them.
Well, if you own a restaurant, that's kind of
Yeah.
that and he was speaking and in very good shape when he had that restaurant. So that's a testimony there.
Yeah. He had a really tough trainer when they first opened the restaurant.
He had some guns, didn't he? Have some guns? He would show his muscles. Yeah.
I went to the local basketball game a couple years ago, and they had that muscle cam, and the camera caught Tim, and he rolled up his sleeves. And my friend that I was at the game with, she looked at him, she goes, "Oh my God, he's got pythons, because pretty strong." Beautiful story in the restaurant, I have to tell you, because he was really buff. Like he needs to get it back right now. He's got that 15 pounds on him. He was really buff. There was a beautiful moment. We had some friends. They brought some people in who just had a newborn with Down syndrome, and the newborn was still in the hospital, couldn't gain weight, and muscle tone was so low, wasn't eating well. And they brought that dad into Tim's restaurant, and he was talking to my husband, and he's like, they can't get him to eat. And Tim had a little trouble eating at first. He lost weight his first month because of low muscle tone. And so my husband was telling him that story and how, things that we had struggled with Tim having to do with low muscle tone when he was born. And then Tim comes up behind his dad and does this tap on the shoulder and then ducks around like that. Tim has a sense of humor, which has been really fun. And Tim goes, or Keith, my husband goes, "Hey, Tim, come here for a minute." He goes, "Okay." And he goes, "Roll up your sleeves." So he rolls up his sleeves. He goes, "Show your muscles." And he's like, he was at the prime. And the dad he opened his eyes and he looked at my husband and he said, "My son's going to do that." It just it gave him this hope. I'm going to do that with my son right there,
We need to have role models. Yeah, we need role models.
Right. And Tim did come from that place. I cried and cried because they told me to stop nursing him because he was losing weight. And what was happening is muscle tone was so low that it was just leaking down the side of his face. That was part of it. And that he wasn't getting enough suction. So they made me start giving him a bottle because he said he can't continue to lose weight. And of course, at that time, they're still watching for heart things and things like that. And I just cried and cried. And finally, the doctor said, "Look, just nurse him first, but then you have to give him a bottle." And so I did. And then a month later, I got to get rid of the bottle, right? But, it was just one of those things for me that I thought, oh, he's got so much stacked against him right now. At least he should be able to nurse, right? And so you just figure out what's important to you and you stick to it. And that story was really important for that young dad to hear. There's Tim, fully vibrant, strong. He had a similar beginning,
And a business owner.
And a business owner.
World famous. So we've talked about Tim's network, that he's got a lot of friends. But a lot of parents have shared with me, and I've seen this too, that it can be harder to make friends. Was there anything special that you all did to help with that, or that Tim found, or was it really just his magnetic personality? Talk about that journey if you could, because it is hard for a lot of individuals with disabilities to make friends.
It is. And sadly, when I say Tim has friends, he has some friends who have disabilities, because they're on the same Special Olympics team or whatever, but he doesn't get together with them. Tim uses Uber, but I don't know any of the others that do. Could they meet at a restaurant and have dinner, or can they go to a movie or something, So when I say Tim has friends that he gets out and does socialize, it's not people with disabilities on a regular basis. If I help set it up, it is, right? So there's a gap there. Again, I think for parents, though, it is about making sure that you do the things of just having them do whatever else you and your family are doing, and setting those expectations that they join in, that they belong, that they join in the conversation. Get them to look you in the eye when they're talking to you. And I'm talking about young kids. Like when Tim's speech finally started clearing up a little bit better by high school, for instance, the speech therapist came to me and said, I have some time with Tim, and, I can continue doing some of the things that I've been doing, but is there anything else you want? And I said, yeah. I said, people are starting to understand him more clearly now. How about working on his conversation skills? Like getting them to converse back and forth, look you in, don't look down, to look up, to shake hands, the things that signal to other people that you're open to talking, right? And that's just starts at a young age. Start expecting it.
Now, when I was talking about friends, I meant disabilities or typical developing people. It didn't have to be either or. A lot of people have trouble making any friends. So
Right.
The fact that Tim has so many friends who don't have disabilities, was there any magic formula that you can remember, or was it really his personality?
It's his personality and his drive.
Okay.
He's got a drive to be with people. And then, his restaurant, those skills, like with 5 years at that restaurant and then the subsequent years of going out in public and giving speeches and interacting with people, it's just grown. So all I can say is, to the level that your child is comfortable with. I mean, Tim's an extrovert. I wouldn't tell you to take an introvert and try to make them do things that they're not comfortable doing. So it has to be what they're comfortable doing. But an introvert needs a one-on-one friend, right? To get together with or go to a movie with, or and Tim doesn't. It's really hard for me. Like even today, when he starts hanging out with some of the people with disabilities that I start hanging out with, their mother will call me and say, "Oh, so do you think it would be okay if Tim comes over to our house for dinner and then we're going to hang out?" And I have to tell him, "Well, you have to call Tim." Like but at the same time, I'm trying to be really gentle, because that's their life that they have at their daughter's ability. And I don't want to question, like, I want them to see that Tim establishes his own schedule and does his own thing but loves to do stuff with their daughter, but you got to call him and set it up. I'm sorry, I'm not answering your question. It's been difficult, in that I would like to see him have more friends with disabilities, doing things as independently as he is. But I know that that's not always possible.
Well, hopefully it gets more possible every day. We have to think that way, right?
Right.
But you just touched on something, and I want to talk about that a minute. Because I have a good friend. She has a daughter with autism, and her daughter's a good friend of my daughter's, and she's constantly reminding me of that too. If there's a party or a birthday party or whatever, ask, because now we're talking about adults. They're above 18 years old. Mm-hmm. So ask the young person, the young adult, if they want to go, instead of always going through their parents. So
right. I think you're talking about what we were talking about earlier, which is, anyway, your point is really good about, like, look at the level of where your child or your young adult is. And if you have to arrange for them to get together with friends, do that, but include them in that. Look at where they're at as far as, like, what would you do? Like if you broke your foot and you couldn't, like, get in your car and drive to the restaurant to meet your friend, what would you do if you wanted to go out to meet your friend? You'd find an accommodation, right? You'd have them come and pick you up, or you'd have someone drive you and pick you up. You'd get the help where you need it, but you wouldn't have to have somebody call your friend for you to say, "Hey, Greta wants to have lunch with you today. Can you meet her at such and such a time?" Right? So it's breaking that down. I think you're right about just look at where they are, right?
It's a good reminder. You're bringing up, but sometimes it's the little things like that, and encouraging our young adults to do that, to gain their independence. So,
Right.
yeah.
And at the same time, you can still be the watchtower.
Yeah.
I will be honest with you. We've had to do that with Tim. He's out there in the world, and he's doing really well. He's very independent. He lives on his own in his own apartment. He pays his bills. He gets his groceries. He cooks his food. He's getting better at that. He had a restaurant for 5 years, so he didn't have to do it for 5 years. But he needs help with budgeting and with money, and there's areas in his life where he needs help. But that didn't all just happen at once. We broke it down. We said, here's where we're at now. Here's where we're going next. And the college did help a lot with that.
Okay. I want to ask you, what do you think? We talked about Tim's goals and dreams, but let's look at 10 years from now. Where do you, he's 33. When we're recording this, he's about to turn 33. Mm-hmm. So 10 years from now, he would be 43. Mm-hmm. What do you envision?
Ooh, that's a tough question because we're at an interim period here where there's still demand for his speaking, and maybe there still will be. I personally would like to see him married. I personally would like to have him pursue his dream of a business, whether it's a microbrew or whatever, but something that is, he needs to be in the public. He needs to be engaged with people. And I really would like to see that business be successful and self-supporting. And to be honest with you, at age 43, I don't want him to need me or his dad anymore. Just to be our son, that's all. That we have something in place, and through his brothers or whatever, we have something in place right now for what happens to Tim if we're gone. But the fact that he can and will live independently, we could, knock on wood, no serious injury or health issues happen. But if that's not the case, that he's still living on his own, hopefully with his wonderful wife. I don't have a picture of where he lives because I think if he meets the right person, he would be happy to live anywhere he really is looking. And I want him to have that because he wants it.
Okay. And I have to echo this. Those are the dreams we want for all our children, right?
Exactly.
All our children. And even the watchtower, that doesn't go away. My 30-year-old doesn't know that we're still watching.
We're there.
So, what was the best advice you ever received?
Well, the first one was the first one was Tim needs a mom, not a therapist. Let them do that job. I think, and this was not specifically aimed at Tim, but the best advice that I've ever received as a mother was, don't be afraid to tell your kids no and mean it. You're the adult, they're the child. And that includes your child with a disability. I was told that I was crippling him if I didn't put limits and tell him no and have expectations for him.
Well, that's true. Just like it's true for all your children.
All of them.
All of them. What advice would you give?
I've thought about this, and yes, Tim makes a living out of being the center of attention and getting attention. But I think that when I look at his growing up, that like, and I'm not saying to never secretly or whatever, do a little happy dance inside, but I found that I celebrated things that Tim was doing that were ordinary things for somebody else, like standing up and walking or climbing up on a table or being able to ride his bike. And I think that like our kids become somewhat self-centered when we give them accolades or extra praise for doing ordinary things. And that's not to say to encourage them, to compliment them, but this over celebration of things like I didn't celebrate that with my other sons, that they, like it's like putting praise on something that maybe you didn't ever expect them to do, but watch how you do it, because it's like they become to expect that. And I think that their world becomes a little bit me-centered. And I think that can be a little bit of a takeaway in those social settings that we're talking about, like as they grow up, to be out there in the workplace or with friends. I think it's really important to have a good, healthy balance of expecting some give and take instead of just giving them all this praise. Does that it's exactly as clearly as I wanted to say it, but I hope my message is clear.
I think what you're saying is, and people have talked about it in a broader sense in parenting, of not getting a trophy for always participating, you're talking about that mentality.
Lately, right? Like,
pardon me? Say it again?
I've seen that in the news lately about getting trophies for.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of just beginning when my kids were in school.
And that's what you're talking about. I see.
Yeah, and just watch out for that. That's all. I mean, but also celebrate too. Like, there's a lot to celebrate about our kids.
What about magnificent, wonderful, magnetic Tim takes your breath away?
Oh.
After we just talked about what you just said, now you have to tell me what takes your breath away.
Oh my gosh. He is love. He is love. And you said it best, he just exudes it. It's not just charisma. It's not just charm. It's this embodiment of love and acceptance that he gives out and readily receives. I mean, he's my hero and he's my idol. I mean, I just need to be more like him.
No. That's beautiful. What takes my breath away is the way he can command a room, like you were describing when you talked about him speaking. That took my breath away. Is there anything that you wish that you could change in our world? And that's a broad question.
Yes, it is. I guess when it comes to our life, is that our children who are so not the norm are just that they're just accepted as part of the whole. I mean, what's normal?
When you're talking about the day when the milestones that you talk about aren't always in the paper, where every homecoming king is not in the paper, where every for instance, if somebody with Down syndrome wins homecoming king or queen, they're still going to get in the paper because it's still unusual.
Right.
You're looking.
Here's the worldview that you're talking about, that we're talking about. I can't tell you how many times we've been interviewed or some story has come out about Tim and they say these words: Tim suffers with Down syndrome.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Tim has never suffered a day, right? And I'm not criticizing that particular person or whatever, but it's that attitude that automatically, I feel sorry for you. Oh, you poor thing, you've got this son who's this, and poor Tim, oh, look, he needs all this help, or he's somehow less than me because he has Down syndrome. Are you kidding me? Take a closer look.
And they say that about numerous disabilities. I see that suffers from. You're right. You're right.
If you're seeing Tim or anyone like him or anyone with a disability as less than you, take a closer look.
In
That's
the mirror.
how I'd like to see the world change. And I was one of them until I had my son. My eyes were open, and I share my son with the world because I want everybody's eyes open. He is who he is. I wouldn't change him. I would never go back and want my second son to not have Down syndrome because he is who he is.
And we know he's fabulous.
Yep.
Now,
Absolutely.
What do you think of the state of disability awareness, inclusion, and acceptance today? Now, this is kind of piggybacking on what we just talked about. So is it, you just want to echo what you just said? Or I'm thinking of, me telling you that inclusion is still not practiced in the majority of schools properly. Things like that. That's what I'm thinking. But you can take it wherever you want to go.
You never know whether, you have to work from the bottom up. And then there's also messengers out there like Tim who can take it from the top down. Like he can go command a room of 3,000, 10,000, 50,000 people and show them something that and it's a slow going process, but some of those people that walked in the door of his restaurant or were carried away by one of his beautiful speeches and his energy, and they can take that and see someone with a disability and go, what am I not seeing here? Or what can I see here that I saw at this other place? Tim can be a bridge, and so many other people like them, and us, the parents, the educators, the people who spend time every day with these beautiful people have a message to send up. And sometimes that message is anger, you need to fix this. And sometimes that message is just about acceptance. And it has to be both. So that all that stuff about the battles, yes, we need to fight. Pick your battles, but also take responsibility for teaching up, teaching that acceptance, teaching what you see in your son or daughter as beautiful, and get people to ask you the question, why do you feel blessed because you have this son or daughter? Because people want to know. I get asked that all the time.
I love that. And I really appreciate that you just took hours of your time to share with us why you feel blessed and how you feel blessed. And you gave us all angles of it. So I want to thank you so much for agreeing to this chat today. You're a wealth of information and experience, and it's a real treat to get to pick your brain and to hear what you had to say. And to our listeners, I encourage you to go to our website to see pictures of Tim and his family throughout his spectacular life and the links that we're going to add there. And I'm sure that you, like me, cannot wait to see what Tim will do next. So thank you, Jeannie. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the last episode in Season 1 of Born Fabulous. I hope you enjoyed it. Be on the lookout for Season 2 after a break. To learn more about Tim and see some photos and videos, go to www.bornfabulouspodcast.com. To receive updates, you can join our email list at our website again, www.bornfabulouspodcast.com, and or like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Born Fabulous Podcast on iTunes or any podcast directory. Also, would you consider giving us a review on iTunes? That not only helps this podcast, it helps others find this podcast. We also have a YouTube channel. Now, please enjoy this clip of The Ring. Lyrics by Melissa Riggio, who was the subject of episodes 1 through 4. The music and voice are by Rachel Fuller.